Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Wrestling Inside and Out. Yes, Rodney. Was he laughing? What's Rodney laughing?
What happened there? But the music was going like a little bit and then stopping and then it was like jumping like it was like an old record or something. It's not doing it. It could be my internet connection. You may be losing me here very shortly, and I know that's a disappointment.
Did you know that in 1979, I just looked at that, and I kind of remember it now. Did y'all know that the Olds brothers had a auto cleaning detail business?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I could use them now because you can't find anybody to ever clean your car or do anything for you anymore. It don't matter what you try, you can't find nobody to do anything anymore.
I'm pretty sure Jerry mentioned it on when he was on the show.
Yeah, I believe he did. This is a great card. August 1st, 1979.
Can I zoom in there, cameraman?
Zoom me in, cameraman. And look at this. Look, it's the superstar against Mr. Columbus. I would venture to say, was that wrestling too? I'm not for sure.
I think that was Wahoo McDaniel.
Wahoo McDaniel. All right. Georgia Tag Team Championship. Ole Anderson, Ivan Koloff, Tony Atlas, and Ray Candy. Special featured Killer Croc Cox, Bob Armstrong. The Eliminator versus Dan Hansen. Carl Fergie against Mike Stallings. Doug Summers against Jerry Roberts. Some of you may know him as Jacques Rougeau. The Mountie! All right. I'll go ahead and show this.
Oh, sorry about that. Let me go back in there again.
Bob Armstrong. Ole Anderson right there. He's telling somebody. Now, you listen to the finish, I'm telling you. Listen to it. It would only be his match because I think that's the only match he ever took care of. And Tony Atlas, Bob Armstrong. Good stuff right there. Good stuff. TV wrestling. Sports Arena, 1028 Front Avenue, downtown Columbus, every Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock. And matches start at 4. I always loved going to that TV. Jack, did you ever go to that?
Yeah, several times.
Love the TV. All right, Rodney, you can go off there. Since I had this up and running. Go ahead, Rodney.
No. Some other people were saying that Mr. Columbus was Tommy Rich.
Tommy Rich.
And I would say what a total and complete disappointment that would have been.
Tommy Rich in that time of match. Well, yeah. Well, you know, we talk about while we're at this, and I wasn't even going to speak of this, but we'll go ahead and speak of this. How bad was it when guys would lose matches and they would come back in mask? Did that hurt the companies by people doing that? Rodney, I'll start with you.
Yes, it did. I'm sorry, Eddie. I thought it was totally. It wasn't following up with the promise made to the fans for one thing. If you have a loser leave town match, and then they come back the next week as a masked man or whatever, yeah, that's a ripoff. That's a ripoff.
Somebody just called me right now and said the same thing. They were going to
tell me.
They were going to tell me that they didn't like that, and so I'll go ahead. I'm going to tell you they made me upset. I'm going to hang up on them.
Well, it's probably they were very concerned about your warranty on your car.
I bet you they didn't want to give me that warranty. I bet they did. Anybody,
They've now decided that they're going to do it in monthly payments now, so they'll help you up. Now you don't have to pay it all at once, so that'll probably help you out a little bit.
Jack, your thoughts on people who lose leave town matches, going to leave town for 90 days or 100 days or whatever it might be, and then they come back in a mask. Good booking, bad booking.
I think both. I didn't mind it as much if a heel did it because it added to that level of hate from the fans. But now I absolutely hated when a babyface would do it.
The only time I think it really worked was Bob Armstrong. When he got beat by Robert, when he got beat and the way he was beat and the way they did it, and he came back as the Bullet, I think it worked. But they did it with Tommy Rich. You remember Tommy Rich lost to Loser Leave Town and came back as the Mysterious Mr. R. Mm-hmm. The only reason I think he came back as the Mysterious Mr. R because they wanted to put him in some kind of suit so he didn't, because he gained a lot of weight and they didn't want him to look better.
What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say there, Brent?
Well, Jack, what was I trying to say?
He was trying to get that Jack lower body. And I have said that to Tommy many times. Hey, man, how's that Jack Lord body going?
Yeah.
Your gimmick. What in the world? That's gimmick infringement on Tommy Rich's part. But it worked with Bob. Bob got over as the Bullet. Majorly got over as the Masked Bullet because he got messed around so badly. But a lot of times when these people would lose, for instance, Junkyard Dog people really didn't buy him as Stagger Lee. They just said, well, you lost the match. You should leave. It was done so many times in the wrestling business. And I always think that when it's a babyface, I agree with Jack. When it was a babyface, that was bad business. A heel, you could find that you could get it and take it off, try to get it off. And then he could, 2 or 3 weeks, he'd take it off and you had to leave. That's understandable. But, man, I think it was bad, some bad booking altogether. A lot of times it was, and I think it hurt the wrestling business. Let's talk a little bit about. We've been talking about Georgia Championship Wrestling a little bit, and we talk about Paul Jones. Paul Jones comes there in 1944, starts promoting Atlanta in 1944. Jack, you have promoted a lot of shows. How important was it for Paul Jones to come to Atlanta? There was already somebody promoting wrestling in Atlanta. I'm pretty sure they were doing decent business in Atlanta. But how important is it to find the right city? There's some importance to this, right, Jack?
It's extremely important. You've got to, of course, as we know, Atlanta was the base for all of Georgia. If you had taken Atlanta out of the equation, I don't know that the rest of Georgia would have ever been as successful as they were during that time period. But Atlanta led the way. You got to have the populace there, and of course, the bigger the city, the bigger the amount of wrestling fans that are going to be there. So it was extremely important always to be in the right city. Now, as we know, on the other hand, some cities are just so hard to run. But Birmingham, Montgomery, they're tough cities here in Alabama to at any time to really be successful. Past a certain time period.
When we look at Atlanta, Paul Jones only at the beginning, 1944, probably till into the 50s, only ran Atlanta. He only promoted Atlanta. Fred Ward was promoting Marietta, Dalton, Columbus. If you look back at it, Fred Ward was promoting the majority of the towns. There was another guy in Augusta that was promoting shows. So they had different promoters. Paul Jones only took care of Atlanta. And Rodney, I'll ask you this question. Did that help them in the success as well? Because if Atlanta did bad on a Friday night, he didn't lose on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday as well.
That's right. If you need to change gears if things don't happen on Friday night. You've got to change gears. People are not going to buy that, especially. And of course, by this time there is no TV right now. Is that right? 1944, there would not be any TV as of yet.
Not yet.
So this is all done by local publicity, primarily newspaper, back in those days. And I doubt that there was any wrestling radio shows, were they?
Now Charles told us that there was before it was on television, there was a actual radio show that would talk wrestling. Now, I don't remember what years he said it was, but very interesting. Let me ask y'all this question as well. Do you know that Tom Ernesto was the Great Bolo in Charlotte? Another guy named Al Lovelace, I believe was his last name. He was also the Great Bolo prior to Tom Ernesto. He was wrestling somewhere else. And he sued Tom Ernesto for using the Great Bolo name, and it got in the newspapers in Charlotte, North Carolina, that They got it wrong. It was Fernesto for some reason. Maybe that was really his real name. I'm not for sure. But it got in the newspaper, and they said that Tom Ernesto could not make the money that he made in Charlotte or anywhere until the lawsuit was over, because if he won, if this cow guy won, he would get the money for that, for him using the Great Bolo. And I will find that next we will not be on here next week. We will not be here next week. I just want to let everybody know we want to be there. We've got some Christmas things we've got to do.
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving stuff. Yeah, Thanksgiving. That's what's coming up next. I think some Thanksgiving stuff to do. So we won't be here next Tuesday, but we'll be there the following week. And I will find the newspaper article that I found during this whole situation and read it to you. That is crazy. Have you ever heard of something like this, Jack?
I actually had heard that story before.
Wow, that's crazy. That's just a crazy story. I didn't know it, but it's a crazy story. And,
Now, the Great Bolo was a masked man as well, was he not?
Yes.
Same mask as the assassins.
Well,
probably the promoter had run the assassins into the ground over there, so he had to give it a different name.
I would take that. I don't believe the mask was the same. Maybe at the beginning they might have been, but I'm pretty sure it looked different by the time when they went to Atlanta to be the assassins. But I could be wrong about that. Yeah, Wendy, I'm sorry. Yes, I thought it was Christmas time. You just have to understand. The first thing that goes is your mind, and that's happening to me.
It's probably because your neighbors already got their
Christmas. You know what goes second after your mind?
What?
I don't remember.
Let's talk about that. We'll get back to Territory Booker, but I want to ask both of you. The Road Dogg, he made a statement this week, and it's all. I guess it would be in your thought process. But he said that Bret Hart was not a great wrestler. He didn't think he was a great wrestler. That he was a better entertainer than he was a wrestler. Rodney, what do you say to that? Do you think that's a?
I'm not sure why he was even talking about Bret Hart. You would think in his life right now he would have better things to do than run around running Bret Hart down. Apparently, maybe a little jealousy, I would assume. Normally, that's what it leads to. If you're talking about somebody else, you are obviously jealous of that person. And let's be honest. Let's look at the situation. Bret Hart, WWE champion. Road Dogg, zilch. Bret Hart, Intercontinental champion. Road Dogg, zilch. So basically, if he wasn't in a tag team, El Road Doggo, you were not. Nobody was interested in you. Whereas Bret Hart was. Excuse me, are you growling at me?
She's down here wanting loving.
Hey, the Road Dogg was hot.
But I'm just saying. I'm getting around it. But so if you're now, let's go on further now. Bret Hart was also teaming with another Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and they were the WWE tag team champions. So that would be he would have held 3, while Road Dogg held only 1. If I was Mr. Brian James, I would stick to just talking about my regular job and be interested in it, and don't be running down Bret Hart.
I don't understand why. Did one day, Jack? You know Brian better than I do. You've talked to him more than I have. Did one day Bret Hart pee in his cornflakes one morning?
There was that time where that was going around.
I don't know the entire context of what was the subject matter was, or how they got into it. Really, basically, what I took from it is that I didn't read where I really felt like he was saying he was not a good wrestler. but that's what he was a wrestler
Yeah.
and not an entertainer. Whereas Road Dogg was 100% an entertainer.
Yeah.
So, but it's apples and oranges. I mean, and we need both. At the end of the day, from a business perspective, you need the ones who can entertain, but you also need the ones like Bret Hart who can go in there and wrestle and make it seem legit. I know that's not important in today's product, but at that time, it still was important. Now, there was a lot of options for Vince back then to put the belt on, several different folks. But he took a gamble. He went with Bret. I think it paid off for him. I don't think Bret was probably the biggest ticket seller of any, but the business in general was down during that time. And I don't believe they could have survived without, him, Shawn Michaels, even though they hated each other in real life, they worked so well together, So, and that opened the door to Steve Austin and all, and the business changing forever during that time period. And Road Dogg was a part of that, and I think he added tremendously. Him and Billy Gunn together, my favorite tag team of all time. But they're entertainers, and Brian has said many times, I'm not a wrestler. I'm there to entertain, and he was great at what he did.
I just don't knock other people. And if you're knocking them, Bret Hart, tremendous athlete.
Well, if Bret would have only got him a catchphrase, like you didn't know. And,
Well, he did have a catchphrase, didn't he?
And a suck it. He needs to put suck it, and also pointing at each other's groin. I think that was always good highbrow entertainment there.
They sold a lot of T-shirts that said that.
Oh man! All right, now let's go. There's something else that I was going to talk about. Now I don't remember what it was. I had it on my mind all day today. You would think I'd jot this stuff down somewhere, wouldn't you?
Butch.
Oh yeah. Some people all up in arms because there's a guy in WWE called Butch, and now they're upset because the Bushwhackers, Butch and Luke, there was somebody called Butch. Now I don't think the sheep herders, the Bushwhackers, are upset about this because they're thinking to themselves, well, I don't own the name Butch. There was a Butch Reed. There was
Butch Malone.
Butch Malone, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Butch Cassidy, one of the greatest little people wrestlers of all time.
That's right.
And as I said, my nickname when I was a kid was Butch. So it's.
Well, in other stories, I hate to announce this, but Austin Idol was asked what he thought about Austin Theory using the same name, and Austin Idol responded, "Who?"
Well, the only difference is Austin Theory's first name actually is Austin. So.
Maybe he was named after him then.
Let me tell you something, Austin Idol right here. I'm going to walk and talk tonight. Oh, yes, Universal Thrill, Austin Idol. Go ahead, Jack. I know you.
Well, I just, while we're bringing up Austin Idol, the NWA Hard Times pay-per-view was Saturday night, this past Saturday. The biggest controversy going into this was Nick Aldis has clarified some of the statements he made, but he had called the NWA as just so out of touch, and he even said it does not pass the Harley Race smell check now, and I can't disagree with him. Now, y'all know I like NWA generally. I know so many of the guys up there, and I'm proud to see them getting on a platform. But from a company perspective, I totally agree with Nick Aldis. There is, he clarified today in a statement, or maybe it was yesterday, but I read it today. And he said the problem has is not with the company per se. It's certainly not with the performers there, but it was totally with the owner. And he said, Billy, he said, I just feel like he's so more in tune to trying to make the NWA a woke promotion that the hardcore NWA fans that do watch it, he's not giving them what they're asking. And he said, I know because I talked to him, and nothing against Tyrus, but that main event, I mean, to me, it was like you're putting three guys that WWE never even pushed to the upper mid card level, but now you're having them fight for their world championship. And nothing against Tyrus or Murdoch or Cardona. They're great workers, but perception is reality, and that's what we're used to seeing them in. When they were seen nationally. I don't know. He just doesn't seem to be a good direction going in the company right now. And I know that he has reached out to WWE, trying to have talks about maybe WWE picking up NWA as part of their Peacock package, which would help them tremendously. I think that's a smart thing to do. I did have a friend of mine in attendance at the live event Saturday night, and he was texting me during the show, and he said, this is a beautiful building. He said, I got a heck of a light system here. He said, the whole setup is really nice. And I said, how many's there? And he said, well, that's the problem. He said, they're asking everybody to just move to ringside. He said, I'm guessing 75 to 100 people.
Yeah, I noticed that in the photographs.
And when they went live, they cut every light in the house off, which it gave a better atmosphere for an old school type look. But I also knew by that point that they were doing it because there was nobody there. Now, and this is, I know it was promoted well. So I just don't think fans are intrigued to see anybody on the show. And that's sad. There's some great talent there. But there has to be some kind of change. Billy's going to have to open that purse strings and really bring some names in that are available, however he's going to do that. But, the matches, like I say, they were good matches for the most part. But I was looking up before we came on for a recap because I couldn't remember any of the matches.
Oh,
So there was nothing that stuck out to me. I mean, I was pleased to watch it. Maybe it was because I was watching the Alabama game on my tablet at the same time, but just nothing caught me.
what are we talking about, Jack? Are we talking about is it back to not being able to develop talent?
They're running into the same thing we've ran into this earlier this year when we were trying to do something. Billy is trying to do a more old school style where there's actual wrestling, not as many high spots and leg slaps and super kicks but those guys, that's all they know. So it's hard for them to grasp all this. Now, several of them are coming along really well. I'll mention Rush Freeman especially. He's in a tag team now, the Spectaculars, which is the modern day version of the Fantastics. They wear the bow ties and the little sequin jackets out to the ring, and he's really good. He's really doing some actual wrestling in there. So they're learning. Some of them a little slower than others. Billy is sticking with a lot of the guys. I don't see a lot of turnover of talent there.
are we doing storyline because basically if we're doing a sort of old school, they're highly the issues are great. No, they're not just kind of superficial. Are they trying to do some storyline in it?
Yeah, I mean, it seems that they are. I have been off track for the last few months, and I haven't caught up on the TV shows. But I know beforehand, before the last pay per view, uh, they were,
When
doing some pretty good storylines.
when I only lasted when the last time I watched their show, I only lasted uh, 5 minutes. It came off corny to me. Maybe that was just my perception. Of course, that was back in the spring since the last time I've seen it. Is there been a change?
Uh, no, 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 and
Seem
I absolutely agree with you on that realization. When they first started, there was a lot of comedy involved. Now, when they were off for COVID for a while, but when they started back up again, the comedy for the most part went away, and so I was real thankful for that. Uh, they're still, like I say, I don't think
it,
it's the direction they're trying to go per se on that. I think that the talents themselves are still playing catch up and trying to figure out exactly what is needed up there.
it would just seem to me when I was watching it, it was nobody in the show, including the announcer, was taking what they were doing seriously at all. It was more like we're out here. It was like watching possibly a high school play in which they were kind of playing wrestling, but it wasn't really the sports oriented show. They were still trying to find a joke to throw in here or there.
Yeah.
The announcer was really over the top for me. He wasn't really calling the action. He was trying to, I guess, get a reaction out of people. It just didn't come over good to me. And like I said, I only lasted five
Yeah.
minutes and then I was done.
Yeah, it's up and down with that. I see that.
So what we're looking at possibly then, if Billy wants to go in another direction or improve, he's going to have to change his staff, if you will, people that's laying out the matches.
Yeah, I believe so. He needs, from my understanding, he is his booker, and he's not as bad as Tony Khan, because at least he cut his teeth in a promotion up in Chicago years ago. Trying to learn what he could, but still, if this isn't something you've done for a long time, it's hard to do, especially at the level he's trying to shoot for.
So I would also assume, and I'm just guessing here because like I haven't watched the show, he's kept the same talent for a very long time. Would
Yeah,
I would I
yeah.
be wrong in assuming
No,
that?
no, that is
Because
dead on.
Nick Aldis has been there forever, from what I
Yeah.
remember. I mean, and,
Well,
and I remember one of the
he was
first shows.
the NWA champion before Billy even bought the promotion.
Well, I remember seeing they had the world championship match in that studio, which I thought demeaned the world title just by putting it in a small studio. And this is the one that the crowd wasn't quite centered in the middle. It had I don't know, it had a big door or a big space in the middle. I think that was the one they did in Georgia, in Atlanta, and it didn't look good. And the crowd did not know who was there. I don't even know if they seemed like they were not wrestling fans. They were not really into what was going on. They seemed like they were having to be prompted to want to yell. There's just a natural reaction to what goes on in the ring, and I didn't think that the reactions to the fans were making during those matches were. It seemed to be a little bit put on.
Well, I went, I guess it was 4 years ago, to the 70th anniversary of the NWA show that they did in Nashville at the Fairgrounds Arena, and it uh, it was a great show. I mean, from top to bottom. But he was bringing in, Road Warrior Animal was there. Uh, uh, Magnum TA was there. Tony Schiavone was on commentary. And the main event match between Cody Rhodes, who came in as the NWA champion, against Nick Aldis, really stands the test of time in my mind as a fan, because I still remember a lot of that match. It was just a great professional wrestling match. They didn't do a lot of the wild stuff that you're so used to, and I guess that's really why it stuck out to me. But that crowd was eating it up. And yet here we come 4 years later, a little over, and you can't get 100 people in the building. So there's
what city was this in?
Nashville. Well, they were in, like I say, in Nashville on the 70th. This week they were somewhere in Louisiana, and I can't remember where.
So really not a place the NWA was strong in the first place.
Not per se, no.
And I did see that the next show, I think, is coming up back in Knoxville at the Convention Center, it seems like. That's what I saw.
Yeah.
Does the
A lot of
NWA
work there.
thing anymore?
To people my age, our age, yeah, I think it does. I don't think a lot of people our age, though, still know that they're trying to make a comeback.
That is true. That is
I think,
absolutely true. There's no marketing there. You're right.
I mean, I talk to folks my age, a little older. They'll talk about how they love the NWA, and if I mention, hey, well, the NWA's trying to come back, they hadn't heard about that. You know,
Sure.
folks our age are not as big on the internet. You're going to have to get somewhere besides Fight TV, which nothing wrong with that. I used to do weekly shows on there myself with a promotion. But for somewhere like NWA, they have got to have a nationwide media outlet that they can get on if they're going to actually do anything.
Or they're going to have to find a home territory and stay there and build it. They're going to, one of the two things is going to have to happen. I don't know how much are their ticket prices. Do you know?
I don't think they're terribly high. I don't really remember if I even looked at their ticket prices, but they film actually in Nashville. So I think every few weeks, and maybe it's every 6 weeks, they go in and do 3 or 4 days worth of taping. And they have 2 different shows that are on Fight TV. One comes out, I think, on Tuesdays and one on Fridays, if I'm not mistaken. But 2 1-hour shows. But it's in a small studio. Just and I know what you're going. They're going for that old school look, which they have that much better than what they had it when they first started, when they were filming in Atlanta. I didn't like that setup at all. But this is more intimate. They've got curtains up all the way around. I would guess you could get 75 people in there, which is fine for a TV taping. But unfortunately, you know, they're trying to go back in time, which I appreciate. But today's level of fans, you know, of a certain age, all they know is big crowds, pyro. You know, that's what they're used to. So when they look at NWA, all they're thinking is, this is some independent shit. Yeah. And really, they're about at the level of a great independent show. That's where they're at.
And if you don't do anything different within the matches themselves, it even makes it look worse, because you're trying to go back in time, but the matches, you're trying to stay with what they're seeing now. And if you're going to go back in time, you need to go back in time. And I think I think that's where maybe they go wrong. Don't go back in time.
Well, you have to remember, though, we're not dealing with the. Okay, I almost stepped in it, and we're not going to step in it tonight. But what you're dealing with is that the wrestlers themselves absolutely refuse to do that style, and it won't matter how much you pay them. They're simply not interested in doing that style that he wants to do. So in essence, he's going to have to set up. And me and Bill Dundee talked about this. I'm talking back in 2000 and 2011. You're going to have to set up and do training and train these wrestlers yourself, not to let them come from somewhere else, not to let them do their independent thing, not to let them develop themselves. Go and develop them yourself. That's basically how it's going to be done, because otherwise, and make them understand, because it seems like today's wrestler is not a wrestler. He is an actor, and let them know this is acting. All right. This is just like you're going to be like The Rock's doing this little territory show. The Rock. That way they can be more understanding what you're trying to do, more so than saying, okay, this is sport. They've never seen sport. The wrestlers of today, ones that's 20 years old or whatever, is getting in the ring, they've never seen that style of wrestling. All they've known is WWE, and I mean all they know is WWE, not AEW, not anywhere else. All they know is AEW. Speaking of somebody else, Ricky Morton's son, was he on that show? Was he not?
He was, and he won the NWA Junior Heavyweight Championship on that show.
And hey, and Ricky Morton ran into the Marshall Tucker band on the way either there or home, where it was. But Ricky Morton,
I feel for Mr. Corgan. I really feel for Mr. Corgan, because I what he's going for. But he's going to have to make a really big, huge investment in the training aspect of it and develop his own talent that cannot come from somewhere else. Just simply can't be done.
why is no one utilizing Ricky Morton in a more office type setting?
I don't know, and he has actually talked to Tony Khan about doing that for AEW, and Tony is just not interested.
It's again.
Morton would tell him off in no uncertain terms. Is that the reason?
I don't think Tony Khan really understands who Ricky Morton is. I'm sure he remembers the name, but he's of the current generation. All he's seen is, late 90s on of what professional wrestling became, not what it was before. What he doesn't understand is that he doesn't have to change his overall style of what he wants wrestling to be for his show. But the basics never change. And if there's anybody that can teach people the basics of what you need to know, Ricky Morton is that guy.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing that he could teach that nobody knows is how to sell. And that would be the key. But Ricky will not be able to teach them how to jump off the top rope onto the table, because he don't do that.
Well, I seen him do a dive, though.
Oh, did he?
just a couple of years ago. But here was the thing. He didn't do anything in that match until he did that one spot. That one spot right at the very end, and then they took it home. And it meant something. It wasn't just a something that happened during the match. It meant something. And people were, I remember people messaging me at that time, hey, Ricky Morton did it. I said, yeah, but when? When did he do it? Are you paying attention? It meant something when he did it. When you're doing it 2 minutes into a 15-minute match, it means nothing.
Yeah. Booking. I'm going to go back to booking, then we got to talk to the insiders. The insiders got some good stuff to say. Booking. Let's talk Tony Khan. I don't know about WWE. WWE could be a completely different monster in its own right. But let's talk Tony Khan, Billy Corgan. Do they book backwards, or are they just booking week to week?
I firmly believe AEW is booking week to week. I think that they have tried, but they have so many injuries. And that's their fault too, because of the style that they allow there. I think that the guys that are actually getting over, like Chris Jericho, they have a lot of leeway into what stories they're trying to tell. Now, I'm not saying Tony just leaves them, alone and lets them do what they want to, because, that ego would never allow that. But I think he does give in to Jericho and, a couple of others like that. because the only one that really has long-lasting storylines of any kind is Jericho.
And that's his ability. That's Jericho. That speaks to Jericho's ability to be able to sell himself and to
Yes.
be able to convince people, which that's a skill in itself,
Yes.
for sure.
Because and maybe people don't understand what we're talking about, and maybe we need to, on a supporter show, is actually explain the booking backwards process and how that works and why it works and why you have to book backwards. And you cannot book from week to week because then it makes no sense. Stuff makes no sense. But if you book backwards, week number 3, you're going to do something. Week number 6, you're going to answer it. Week number 7, you're going to answer what you did maybe on week number 5. It all makes sense. And then that final thing will be you'll put all that stuff that you did all for the final. And that's what the wrestling business is missing today.
Yeah, it's like writing a book. You got to know where you're going to end before you can decide how you're going to start and tell the story.
Sure.
And that's a lot. I don't even know if WWE is doing that anymore.
Yeah, they do. Not as much. They do that for their long-term stuff. Their main folks, I think they kind of just juggle everything else in between. But I know they've had plans in place for Roman Reigns for a long time.
And that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the reason he gets over. That's
Yep.
the reason he goes. Let's see. Jeff Dobbs is with us. Jeff Dobbs, good evening, guys. So let's get it ready to wrestle. I'm going to tell you what, I think that Jeff tried to call some kind of. I'm thinking about Michael Buffer that just had a birthday not long ago. Man, get $10,000 for one match. And yes, I'm bitter. I'm bitter.
Nobody could tell.
Good evening, guys. Let's have a great show from David Bias. Richard Hood is with us as well. Donnie Hester with us. Wendy Harkins. Hello, everyone. Facebook didn't give a notice. They don't ever give a notice anymore. I don't think.
We had trouble getting on too, so that might have had something to do with it tonight.
Richard Hood talked about the card. That was a great card for wrestling. Everybody on that card knew what they were doing, except I don't even know who the eliminator might have been.
I would say Buck Brannigan, because he was against Stan Hansen, and he probably lost his mask and an elbow to the back of the head.
He did in Gainesville about the same time. Mr. Columbus was Tommy Rich, I believe. Charles said it was Jack Lord.
It could have been.
I'll never tell.
Totally agree with Rodney. You loser leave town match. You go to AEW. Oh yeah, I don't know. We've talked about the killing of territories and that Geckenhurst territory.
I can tell you right now. There's been nothing from AEW this week. I mean, nothing.
Oh, Michael Barr. Hello, all from Michael Barr. Yellow Dog on the Midnight Garden. Not even for sure what he's talking.
Midnight. He corrects himself. Coming up.
Oh, yes, and the Midnight Rider. Yes, I think it hurt Dusty when he did stuff like that. I just think it did. I had a great weekend of wrestling shows. I got to meet Jonathan Grisham. Is that his name? Yeah. Modern Day Grappling Show at the TWA Red Bank Sunday. Jack Adam Priest. What's that say?
He picked in the octopus, and that's great because he's got 8 shoulders.
Hey, talk about
him rolling around.
Does anybody know why Jacques Rougeau was in a lobster suit? Does anybody know why that was? I've seen it all over the internet, and he was in a lobster suit. Was he in like a Masked Singer thing or something? And he was one of the contestants.
I don't know.
It's possible. I don't know.
I don't know. I just seen it. If anybody knows, let us know what that is. Jerry Stubbs got over with it, sort of. He did, but it got so old by 1987, 88, it was just old. It was just old hat. It just didn't get over as well as it did. You can't do something over and over again. You just can't do that. And I think Jerry could tell you that. You can't just keep on doing it over and over again. It'll eventually wear out. I like Jerry Stubbs as Mr. Perfect Jerry Stubbs. And Mr. Olympia. And when he was in Louisiana, I thought it was so good. And why they didn't take and do that same kind of ideal in Alabama, I don't know, because it could have worked. It could have been great because Jerry could have drew with anybody, put them in the ring with somebody, make a program with them. It's going to draw. That's all there is because Jerry knew how to work. Great too, Jack, from Thomas Bruff. Let's see. Great to see Jack Lord. Has he not ever seen you before?
Yeah, we're friends on Facebook.
Mike Schaefer is on our YouTube channel. He said, love the territory stories. Richard Hood, in a loser leave time match, I think the loser should leave for a while. I agree. And I think it was bad for business when they did. Because what happens, and we're talking about the death of territories. It is not. How can you draw the loser leave town match if the guy never really leaves and he puts a mask on? So the next time you do a loser leave town match, it won't draw because people said, "Well, it didn't work last time. The guys came back in mask, and it just doesn't draw when you do something."
Well, we get to the point where that's the thing when they see the match come up, loser leave town. Oh well, he'll just come back in a mask, and that's bad business. That is bad business.
Bad booking. Bad booking there. Hello from
Gil.
And they've got when he says a little snow, he means a little snow.
Hey, we've got somebody from Chicago. Scott Burke is with us.
Welcome.
And let's see, Charles Bellflower, 1949 matches were broadcast live from the City Auditorium. And we're going to get to 1949 on their next Georgia Championship Wrestling. A lot of interesting things on part 3 of Georgia Championship Wrestling. I never knew Fred Ward promoted as many places he promoted. Wendy Harkins said something about that. I said Christmas. I don't blame you. David, I just been watching a lot of stuff on Christmas stuff that just it gets me in the mood, except I don't want to put no Christmas stuff. I want to go see Christmas stuff, but I don't want to put none up. David Townsend, love it. Michael Abar sounds like Road Hog Zilched out. Mickey Mayfield, did you guys know Jim Cornette doesn't like Vince Russo? Yes, I have heard.
There's a long list to that.
I did tell y'all that Vince Russo sent me a friend request, didn't I? He had seen me badmouth him on a buddy of his Facebook page and sent me a friend request. I didn't badmouth him that bad. I just said he killed WCW.
Finished it off for sure.
Vince Russo was childlike in his booking. It was like a 15-year-old booking. I mean, major guns and just the names were just childish. It made no sense whatsoever.
It was like Beavis and Butthead, both that show.
It was horrible. No taste. It was tasteless. It just wasn't. It wasn't any good. Evening, guys. I hope you guys are good. From Christopher Hughes. Jeff Dobbs. I think the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever been is all a perception of the person. If you ask Tony Khan who he is, he will say it's him. If you ask Vince, we already know that answer.
Can't argue with that.
Let's see. Michael Barr. How many wrestlers back in the day could show pain and sell the fans on it? There were many. Bob Armstrong was good. Tommy Rich was good. Ricky Morton was good. Tommy Gilbert was very good at doing that. And how many times today do we see a man hurt in the ring and someone coming to his aid?
That's not going to happen.
Let's see. Christopher Hughes. The best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. That was his catchphrase. I honestly thought Bret Hart matches were tremendous. I mean, and if I was doing a top 100 list of the best matches I ever seen, sorry, Brian, I love you to death. I love your whole family, but you're not in that list. I'm sorry, you're just not in the list. Bob Armstrong is, but I'm sorry, he would not make my list. But Bret Hart did. If you've never seen the match he had with Owen Hart, his brother, that is a classic match. That is tremendous. He even had a tremendous match with a half messed up British Bulldog where he had to lead the match. That tells you he's a great wrestler. So I'm sorry.
Didn't just lead the match, led it to one of the best matches that you could watch during that time period.
So, what's up, Donnie Astor from Richard Hood? Let me go on down here. My favorite micro wrestler of all time, Cowboy Lang. Little Tokyo. I love Little Tokyo.
It was awesome.
Little Tokyo was so good in the ring. Got to see him so many times live, and just good interactions with the referees. Have you ever noticed now, though, little people matches, they do that now in every match? You ever noticed that in matches now? It's almost like watching a little person match in every match now. So now you can't even get over with the little people anymore. Great stuff. Austin Idol, who? Austin Idol. Well, we could talk about him for days and days and days. It wouldn't be good either. Some things would be good. I'll take it back. Some things would be good. There was a time that Austin Idol was very good at what he did. Let's see. Michael Barr. How many? This is a good question, Jack. How many people use the name Cowboy?
Gosh, a bunch of them. I mean, we would be pressed to actually come up with a solid number on that because that was a popular term all the way back in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah. I mean, just think of Cowboy Bill Watts, Cowboy Ron Bass. I don't know, Bob Ellis. Did I already say Bob Ellis?
Cowboy Luttrell.
Yeah. Well, look at it. Cowboy Kevin Dillinger, Alan Martin,
Frankie Lane.
Yeah. So many people did that.
Rick Casey. Scott Casey.
So we should do a list one time of all the Cowboys that was wrestling. I guess they all should get together, get upset, and get with those people that wrote that. There was somebody called Butch.
That's right.
And
well, if they would see that name, they would see Cowboy Bob Orton. They would have probably asking him, how did you feel about those other guys using your name?
Or say, how do you feel somebody may use the Orton name? Randy. Do you?
Does it upset you? Yes.
Does it upset you that he used Orton?
Well, Adam Page doesn't go as Cowboy, but he goes as Hangman. But it's a full Cowboy gimmick, which is great coming from a guy who only rode the plastic little horsey outside of Kmart. But
Wendy Harkins, the only hey, what was that other guy that I don't really like? Wasn't he a cowboy too? The guy that was in Birmingham, whatever that guy's name was. I can't remember his name now.
No, he was the Great Kaiser.
Oh, no, I didn't like him either. No, he was a good guy. But
it's just that once he left the dressing room, he was horrible.
Cowboy James Storm. There's another cowboy.
Yeah.
The only one in NWA that I would watch would be Odison. I saw him. He looks
Odinson, yeah.
Odison. He looks like he'd be pretty good. That's from
he's pretty good.
Now I am sure that the people at Marvel have problems with that. I wonder they need to go and ask him. How do you feel about that wrestler using the word Odison?
Well, is that a character on?
Yeah, that's Thor. That's his name. Odin's son.
Well, if he gets a call from him now, we're sorry. All we can say. Right, Jack, Old School Wrestling was the best. Trying to sell the fans on it is tough. It can be done. It can be done. You could make the people believe it can still be done. It's just They don't care if the people believe it or not. Nick said that Billy Corgan thinks him being upset with NW is a shoot they can turn into a work.
Now, he said that originally, it's always been a shoot, but Nick said that they had agreed that it could be turned into a work, but that was a while back and is not something that is going to happen this time.
I want to thank Victor Nash. Victor Nash gave us some stars last week, and I forgot to say thank you. Victor, thank you so much for that. While I am thinking about it, I just saw it on the little rundown here. Been watching the Old Continental on YouTube, and I came across a video collage. Is that the collage? That's the name of that. That is over 5 hours long.
Wow.
Continental Wrestling was a great company. It was run the way they did it, the way they told the stories were tremendous. I don't know what happened years later when they didn't know how to tell stories, but at that point, they did know what they were doing during that time point. Michael Barr, is wrestling going to go over with the fans? It has to gain the attention of the fans, and they have to listen to the fans. Quit listening to them. And see, even the police know that they should be arrested for the bad booking. There was something, I think I'm getting the first touches of Alzheimer's. I'm not certain, but I think it's something and it just leaves me all at once. So one of these days I'm not even going to remember my name. I watched the new NWA Power this evening. My opinion, it was terrible. I have seen better indie shows. It looked like they might have had 50 people in the stands, if that, from Randy Christ. I've not watched it.
No, I haven't watched it yet either.
So
Now, is that the show that's from Nashville that you're talking about?
Sometimes when they do pay-per-views, they will they will stay in that same arena for a day or two and film TV for a few days.
Rick Brooks, hi guys and everyone. Mickey Mayfield said the product we grew up watching is probably not going to get the fans' attention now because they're grown up knowing wrestling is a work. We were convinced it was real. Yeah, I think it's the way it was produced, though. It was produced so you believed it was real. Today, it's not even produced to make you believe it's real, and they produce it as a satire of wrestling. It's not wrestling anymore. It's a satire of wrestling. It's like watching Saturday Night Live to a certain extent. This is what I believe is missing in wrestling. I'm going to end in 12 weeks in a cage match. And now I'm going to make you want to buy a ticket 12 weeks from now, cage match in the Omni. And I'm going to build up to that 12 weeks. And so on the third week, I'm going to do this. And then on the fifth week, I'm going to do this. Now they're going to wrestle each other on the fourth week. But boy, they're going to get into it with each other on that. And then it just moves on and on and on until you get that. That is missing. I do not see that in wrestling today. If you think about it, why did they turn Wardlow in AEW? Made no sense. They took all that time to make him the babyface, then did they not turn him heel? Just recently?
I haven't watched in a month, so I'm not sure.
Or if they didn't turn him, you wouldn't even on the show. Why would you spend all that time doing that? You know why? Because you didn't know what you were going to do on that 12th week.
Yeah.
And the people who promote wrestling today don't take wrestling serious. They think it's a comedy. They believe it's a comedy. They do not think. That's the reason WWE is the best at doing that show. They're the best at it. And you're never going to compete against them. And you shouldn't try. Produce something completely different. And then you'll be your own. You'll be your own. You'll be producing your own. But don't produce what WWE, because if the people that you're going to TBS or whoever, if they were going to get a WWE product, they would have called them. They would get them to produce that product for it because they're the best of it. and you're not going to beat them. So why not try something different?
They were saying that in the end it was Joe that turned heel, not Wardlow. But you're right about the fact that when he turned, they had no direction for him. Instead of pushing him to the top, he just got, well, okay, that's enough. We're done with you, and we're moving on to the next thing.
But why would you do that? If he wasn't
because he wasn't a WWE alumni is what it was. If you didn't have a WWE, I mean, it was. I mean, you hate to say that. You hate to say that MJF was right about Tony Khan when he was making his interview, but when he did his little ad lib or whatever you want to call it, his spiel that night, they got suspended for. But he's right, exactly he was exactly right. And Wardlow was not one of the WWE guys, so he's not going to get a push, and that's the truth.
So they didn't know. So what you're saying, and Jack, I'll ask you this question. So they didn't know prior to him turning what they were even going to do with him.
I don't believe they did.
They knew that that MJF was going to put him over, which he did. That was going to be the end of it because there's nothing after that. Not one thing. They didn't build him up to face the champion.
And here was the thing is that was exciting. You knew that they were going to have this big match, but then you started having that little shoot deal, with MJF where you wasn't sure if he was going to come, but you really got the impression was if he's going to come there, it could be his last match. So we just know he's just coming to get beat. So it took all the wind out of Wardlow's sails. And Wardlow had no option. He had no choice because nobody knew what to do. And then when they turn him, he wins. They do that, and people love him. But then he's only in there periodically. They send him right back to just going in there and jobbing guys out every week, which doesn't mean anything. They're not really leading to anything. And if they do, they'll set up a little something. You might not see that match for a month, but you still going to see it on TV.
Well, here's the thing, and this is the reason I say they had no idea. Instead of look at what they did with the AEW Championship, the world title. Get who they put it on after Puke gets hurt, and they put it on Moxley, which they should have put it on Wardlow because Wardlow needed it where Moxley didn't.
Well, and
it's because it's a WWE guy.
That's right. And we've talked about this: is how are you going to set your company apart if all you're doing is your top guys are ex-WWE talent? You should have long before now. I'm a firm believer in you bring some names in to get eyes on the product, but don't let them be the product. Develop your own talent, put them in those top positions or build them towards that. But it don't take 3 years or whatever it's been now to do that. Wardlow was ready for this. MJF was ready for this a year ago. And they've just, it's like they're standing in place dribbling. And if you dribble too long, you're out. You've lost momentum. You got to keep going when you've got something hot that's working. You got to push it. You got to keep going with it.
Yeah, watch the fans, see what they're.
And if you're going to be WWE, then by golly, watch what they're doing and then do everything they're doing.
Yeah, you don't halfway do it.
It's just confusing to me as to what they're really trying to do there. And somebody commented, because we're about to run out of time, but somebody commented about how they did work stories for their pay-per-view. And that's fine, but they hit and miss it. It's not a constant thing. They may, and they'll plug their matches well in advance, but then it's just like guys are left in limbo leading up to that. MJF, when's their pay-per-view? Saturday, maybe? Anyway, MJF hadn't even been on TV in a few weeks. Yeah. So, from my understanding, he's all filming that movie. So I don't know. It just doesn't doesn't make a lot of sense.
No. All right, we'll hit some people real quick, and then we're going to get off of here. We'll go about 5 more minutes, and we'll Animal and Jack's done. I think it's Dane done a show together.
Yeah,
did a show together from David Buys. Michael Barr. If I was going to sell myself, I'd make it look as real as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you also had others before he removed affiliates. I'm not for sure what we were talking about at the time, but.
Probably NWA, because there were other affiliates at NWA before Billy what's his face bought it. Right.
Yeah, Cody Rhodes is very underrated as a worker. I watched the match between he and Barry Windham back in '90, I believe. It was very entertaining, and he had been in the business working a long time. Cody does know what he's doing in the ring. He does know how to tell a story. That's I think that's the reason he can get along with AEW. He tried to tell a story. Tonight's Power Show wasn't even an hour. It wasn't in a studio.
Wow.
Glenn Allen Shelton, he had wealth of talent to draw from. Let's see. Richard Hood, the studio show should be set up so the top talent can get themselves over for the big shows in the arena. I agree with you on that, Richard. You're going to go old school? That's old school wrestling. Michael Barr, independent shows cannot do high fly maneuvers as today's wrestlers. Jeff Dobbs. I saw Dustin Rhodes is really ready to hang it up. I already thought he did.
No, he's not doing a lot of matches, but he's having his retirement match sometime next year.
AEW failure. Tony Khan. Tony Khan doesn't know the wrestling business. If you would really sit down with the people that was there, Arn Anderson.
Yeah, and that's the thing that aggravates the three of us is that he has the knowledge available to him. Yeah. You know, those guys are on payroll. He sees them every week. You know, give them that authority or just sit down and listen to them, you know. But he's not doing any of that. He's squandering probably the greatest wealth of knowledge that you're going to have.
Yeah, not to take advantage of them. I remember saying one time we needed to get Jackie Fargo to come in for 2 weeks and just ride with him, and just get that information from him. You know, finishes that he did, angles that he did, how he got over, what he did to get over. You know, you learn from those people. I mean, Tony Khan, Ricky Steamboat is out there. Bring him in, listen to what he is telling you. He got over, he drew money. You've never drew a dime, Tony. But Ricky Steamboat did. Ric Flair did. Listen to him. There's so many people you could learn from, but they think they're all old people and they have
no value.
They have no value.
And while somebody had asked on here, I saw it pop up a few minutes ago, but Ricky Steamboat will have his last match not this coming Sunday, but the Sunday after Thanksgiving. It's available on Fight TV. It looks like it's going to be a pretty decent card. Now, I don't know what the price is. I looked and I didn't see it on the article that I was reading, but somebody had asked about that. That's when it is, and that's where you can catch that, Fight TV.
Yes, Glenn Allen Shelton, Roddy Piper, Bret Hart, another tremendous match. You've not seen it. Tells a great story. Let's see. I sure wish you would want to hear about Idol from Alfred. We can tell you some. Charles Bellflower said, Cowboy Ron Reed. You still have Cowboy James Storm. Yes, unfortunately, yes, we still have Cowboy James Storm. Cowboy Bob Orton. Which one of you guys is JC Dykes? Let's see. That's from George. That's from Ben Masters. I just noticed that.
I think he's talking about the little picture over there in the corner. The JC Dykes would actually have to be portrayed by Rodney because we don't. Brent and I don't have hair anymore.
That's right. That's true. Why do you think I wear my hat now, folks? JC Dykes was awesome. And I've heard that. I've never got to see him ever. I've seen little bits of stuff that he did, but I never got to see him. And I'd love to see what, how he was. I think Brad Armstrong should have got a bigger push. Michael Barr, yes. We've talked about that. Such a wasted time with him in every territory he ever went to. And blame him when it wasn't his fault. There's another thing now. I agree with Jim Ross most of the time, but I don't agree with the Brad Armstrong statement. Sam Schultz said the Infernos with J.C. Dyke back in the early 70s are a great hill team. I'm a Mid-Atlantic. And they made Drew a lot of money, Sam. And we've got some programs and stuff that he would send. And he'd actually have like what the gate was. Well, at least what the promoter told him the gate was, and how many people were. Rick Brooks Moxley has a pretty good on the mic. I just can't watch him. He's not believable. He's not believable in that Stone Cold Steve Austin role. I'm sorry. Just Jeff Jarrett will not help Tony Khan draw 2 cents. Sorry. Just won't.
Well, he's looking forward to his upcoming match with Braun Strowman and Triple H.
I'm sure how that conversation went is Jeff asking Tony Khan, "Hey, you ever gonna bring Braun Strowman in?" And Tony says, "No, I'll never bring him in." He said, "Well, good. I'm gonna go out there and rip on him then."
I want to thank everybody. Go ahead, Ron.
Mike Schaefer again agrees with me.
I want to thank everybody for being on here today. If we missed your comments, I'm sorry, but we're running out of time because we've got to go over to our supporter only, where we'll continue this conversation because there's so much more that we did not. And Rodney is never censored on there, so you can always come on there, and there's no telling what he's going to say because we have to delete this thing. I make sure the moment I get off of here and I turn it off that I delete it because you never know what Rodney's going to say. He censors himself a little bit here, but there we delete it right after. So you can go to our supporter. You can support our channel. It's only $2.99 a month, and it will I think it's up top. You just click on it, $2.99 a month. Plus, it helps us do what we do here. And that is the show, the cameras, the lights, and everything that we do each and every week. Remember, next week, we will not be on here doing some Thanksgiving stuff. So we won't be on here next week. We'll come back to very next week. And I'll try to find that story of the great Bolo. Very interesting story we could tell. Jack, anything we need to talk to the people about before we leave?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, because we will not be here next week. Rodney, anything we need to talk to everybody before we leave?
Kevin Kelly announced that they were going to be launching a new wrestling promotion. The American Excellent Wrestling comes up on January the 7th.
Well,
Director of Habsburg.
Good luck.
And let's hope it's excellent. Let's hope it's excellent.
Well, it's excellence because it has it in its name.
There you go. And as our father always said, put some stars on that poster. It will help you. One of the worst arguments we ever had was over stars on a poster. We'll talk about that on our supporter channel coming up. We're going over there right now. Thank everybody. We won't be here next week. We'll come back the following week and we'll talk more of pro wrestling. See everybody, whatever that date is, the 20, whatever it is. See you there.